Thanks to Ridge Wallets for supporting this video. I'll tell you more about them at the end of the show. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Beginner Bike Giveaway Series. Today is another Living With video, and this time I'll be living with the Z650. This is one of our beginner bike giveaway motorcycles. We have the CBR 500R and the Triumph Street Scrambler also up for grabs. You can click the link down below. Get yourself signed up to win. Now, for those of you who don't know how this works, I'll be living with this motorcycle for the next few days and giving you an owner's perspective of this bike. Obviously, I don't own it, but I'll be thinking about it in light of actually owning it. I'll be tweaking it a little bit, doing a few things here and there. But with that out of the way, why don't we get out for my first impression ride on this motorcycle. Alrighty, starting this one out in motion. We are out on 1431 heading up to Destination Way because I wanted to throw a nice twisty road at this motorcycle. Now, I have been riding this bike on the highway for about the past half hour now, and I will say on the highway it doesn't exactly feel great. Now, that's not because it doesn't have a ton of power. The problem is it's just so vibrational. So before we get into that, let me say that this bike can absolutely do highway speeds with ease. It can pass up to like 90 miles an hour really quickly. You know, I was on the toll road where the speed limit's 75 and, you know, you get up to 85 in a flash. It's really nice how much power this bike has, even though in the 650 marketplace, it's kind of the least powerful one. Makes like 67 horsepower and something like 48 foot-pounds of torque, if I'm not mistaken. And now that's pretty good, but the 650 marketplace is about 75-50 as the standard. So yeah, it is a little bit down on power, but you know, you get somehow the way it's geared, you get so much good torque out of this bike. Makes it really fun to ride, honestly. But on the highway, it vibrates so much, and that's because it's this giant parallel twin, and it doesn't have any kind of balancer shafts in it. It doesn't have any of those nice things that you'd expect on a more kind of upmarket bike, which this isn't really, but it doesn't have any of the balancing shafts or technology to help eat out some of the vibration. All you have are these slugs on the end of the bars. Honestly, at about 70 miles an hour, it starts to get to the point where it's unbearable for me. I know that if I was cruising at that speed for a long period of time, my fingertips would start to get numb from the vibration. And as we're approaching this red light, I can talk about the brakes here, and honestly, these are some of the sharpest brakes I've experienced on a 650. Watch this. Yoink. I almost lifted the rear tire there. They're impressive, honestly. They're legitimately impressive. They feel as good as the Brembo on my SMCR. And that's pretty high praise because that bike's $11,000 to this bike's like $7 grand, $7,500, I think. And I don't know, this thing just, it feels very good to ride. Another thing that I can tell that I love instantly about this motorcycle is the transmission feel. The transmission feel on this is great. It's super snickety. It goes exactly where you want it to go. It tells you exactly what you want. I've heard tell that Kawasaki's transmissions are a little but this feels lovely. Feels great. And that is why I'm not speeding on 1431, because this is a giant speed trap. Now, I would like to talk a little bit about the ergonomics package on this motorcycle, because it's not great, at least for a guy my size. Now, it feels exactly like a bigger MT-03. And if you know my complaints with the MT-03, it's that the, you know, seat hump in the back is too close to my back. The wings on the tank are they're cut too low, so I actually can't get my knees in. And this bike is just big enough for that to not be a super annoying issue. It's just a mildly annoying issue. Another thing that kind of bugs me is the foot placement. I've been riding now for about 45 minutes, and my knees are starting to feel a little cramped. I'm not sure why, but I'm feeling it a little bit in my knees. Just the foot peg position feels a little tall. Maybe if I took the rubber off the foot pegs, that would help, but then my feet would be vibrating like nobody's business, and I would lose feeling in my toes very quickly. Last thing I want to talk about on the highway here are these mirrors. They are pretty good. I can see everything that I want except directly behind me. About this part of the mirror is cut off by my shoulders and my arms. Everything else is clear. So if I want to see behind me, I need to tuck my arm in like that. Same on this side. And I can't really adjust that out because they're just not far enough out for a broad-shouldered gentleman like myself. Pulling on to D-Way here, we are going to that guy's fighting a turkey. Let's go back and see that. That guy's just straight up dealing with a turkey. I want to go see what this guy's about to do. Yeah, look at that. Big ass turkey right there. Not every day you see a man trying to go toe-to-toe with a turkey. Interesting. That's a big ass bird. Okay, back on topic here. Hopping on to D-Way, talking about some of the sporting characteristics of this motorcycle. Now, Yam keeps telling me that he feels the rear tire spinning out underneath him as he tries to give this bike any kind of, throttle. And I honestly, I gotta say, I'm not feeling it at all. I gotta imagine it's down to my weight causing this tire to actually stick to the ground a little bit better. But what I will say is it is sticking to the ground just fine for me to be going through some of these light sweepers here. Now it does tighten up in a little bit. We'll see exactly how it does. I did want to take a second to talk about the suspension as well, because this road is a little bit bumpy. And it feels fine. It feels fine. I think it's probably a little undersprung for my weight in the front, and I could probably use one thread of preload in the back. And I'll adjust that, probably a little bit later on in the week, because I really want to get a good feel for it before I start making any adjustments. And I really appreciate this motorcycle's power. Okay, so again, it's not the fastest of the 650s if you consider just pure horsepower, but it feels great. It feels really torquey. The torque in the mid-range is really, really nice. It's super duper usable. And, flicking side to side, it feels great on or off throttle. The brakes being so nice and bitey really, really helps. All right, here we have a little bit of a test. This speed bump, let's see what the suspension does before I stand up. Okay, that wasn't that bad. So I think overall, the Z650 makes a very good first impression, but I'm interested to see how it feels in the city and how it feels long term, because I have a sneaking suspicion that after repeated rides, I might start picking at it a little bit more, and I'm not sure if it's going to hold up exactly the way that I would want it to. But right now, feels great.
Alright guys, bringing this bike into the shop here, there's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about, and I didn't really feel super comfortable talking about them on the road, and I want to shine a little bit more of a light on them. And the first thing is the front lever feel. These levers are adjustable, which is really nice, and it allows you to tailor the feel to how you want. For example, I actually brought the clutch lever in a little bit because the friction zone was really far out and I wanted it a little bit closer to the bars. And while the front brake feel is really good from the factory, shockingly good actually, it is nice to be able to change it just however you'd like. If you want them a little bit further out, if you want them a little closer to the bars. Actually, this is a bike where having them close to the bars is great because you're never going to yank this bike's brakes hard enough to actually bottom this lever out. Next thing I wanted to talk about is actually the suspension on this motorcycle. Now, it is a Kawasaki, and like I said before, it can be a little bit stiff from the factory, but believe it or not, I actually have not screwed with the suspension in the rear, any of the preload or anything like that, because it feels great for a guy my size. Now, of course, it is buried beneath all this plastic. I couldn't even get a preload spanner in there if I wanted to. But again, I don't need to. It feels really good. So now, unfortunately, I do have to talk about the dashboard on this motorcycle. I cannot stand it. I think it's one of the ugliest dashboards I've seen on basically any motorcycle. I would take the MT-03's dash over this one, and that's saying a lot. I said it before, but this doesn't look cool. It just looks ugly and tacky. It's hard to read in the sun, believe it or not. I don't know. It doesn't do anything for me, and it makes the motorcycle look a lot cheaper than it is. If you can score a 20/20 with the TFT dash, that is definitely the way to go. Next thing I wanted to talk about with this motorcycle are the looks. Unfortunately, I do not enjoy the way this bike looks at all. The engine is great. The way it feels is pretty good, but as I'm riding it, I can't help but think of what I look like when I ride it. And I don't enjoy the team green aesthetic. The green frame is a little kind of neon for me. I don't know what's going on with those silver case covers down there. Not sure where that came from. And the headlight, I don't know, it just doesn't really do anything for me. In fact, it kind of detracts from the whole look of the motorcycle. It's got a little bit of that praying mantis thing going on, which sure, it's to some people's taste, but unfortunately it is not to mine. I do love the engine though. Engine is great, and it handles fine, but it looks like this, man. That doesn't do it any favors. So before we head out into the city and see how this bike feels downtown, I wanted to give you guys an ergo check while we're in the garage, just so you can see exactly what I look like. Now again, I'm 6'3", 240 pounds, and as I mount up, this motorcycle is just a little bit too small for me. To be honest, after about an hour, this bike starts to feel a little cramped, and I start feeling a little bit of pain in my knees, to be honest. As I mount my foot up on the peg here, you can see that I'm stuck into this tank cut pretty hard, and if I put my foot on the peg and try and ride like that, I just don't really fit in there, to be honest. It feels more comfortable if I put my foot a little bit forward like I'm riding on the Harley. And then for the handlebars, my reach is okay, but I'd like it to be either a little further back or a little taller up so that it's just a little bit easier for me to sit straight up.
Alrighty, everybody, we are out here in downtown, kind of, sort of. Downtown's there, but we're heading there. I actually wanted to show you a little bit of the Z in downtown and slow speed stuff. And first thing I wanted to show you actually is how easy this motorcycle is to do just super duper slow speed stuff in a parking lot. It's really easy, really maneuverable. I had to put my foot down there. But it's super duper simple and very well balanced for slow speed stuff, which is awesome. I like a motorcycle that's really manageable, and I actually noticed this because I was riding it home the other day and I was able to clean stop signs without even touching the brakes or putting my feet down, which is awesome. I was able to just, slow down with engine braking. Didn't even need to put my foot down, and then basically got to almost zero and then went through it. It's really nice. It makes it easy to ride in this kind of downtown environment where you're slowing down and speeding up. And wonder why that guy spent all the effort on getting his little Elantra, what the fuck? Very confused. But anyway, as I was saying before I was so rudely distracted by the neon sign in the back of that car, this bike's really easy to just ride around at slow speeds. It's super duper easy. You don't really need to think a lot about it, and you can actually steer a good bit with your lower half. Another thing that I like about this motorcycle downtown is how punchy the engine is, because it gets you out of situations like that very easily. You just hit the throttle and boom, you're moving. The mid-range on this motorcycle is awesome. It's one of the things that I love most about it, to be honest. And it's so easy to ride. One thing that I will knock this motorcycle for, though, and it's really kind of the biggest negative aside from the looks for me, is the on-off throttle feel at slow speed. So let me show you as I'm coming to this light. So we go down to first gear. See how kind of lurchy it was there? It's very herky-jerky, and that's not really fun when you're ostensibly doing a lot of stop-start maneuvers. I gotta believe that this is down to the closed loop thing where the first section of the rev range has to be, you know, I think, what is it, 14 AFR, 14%, something like that. And it just makes this really tough to ride. However, this is actually one of the only times where I will recommend that you go out and get a fuel tune for your bike, because that jerky on-off throttle is 100% fixable. And, you know, with 400 bucks and a tune, problem solved, right? And then your bike's awesome. Normally, I wouldn't say go get a tune. Normally, I think tunes are a waste of money, especially if you're just doing street riding. But in this case, definitely look into a tune for this bike. I think it'll really help smooth out some of the city manners. And then as we come up to this red light here, another thing I want to shout out are the brakes. Watch this. Brakes are awesome. You grab them and the bike comes to an instant stop. It's actually almost too easy to do a little endo on this motorcycle. The brakes are amazing. I don't know what they did, but the more I live with this motorcycle, the more I come to appreciate how good the brakes feel. It also has ABS, which means you're not going to have to worry about tucking the front tire, because I could definitely see people with brakes this bitey locking up and tucking the front end. Not so on this motorcycle. One negative, though, for this motorcycle in the city is the suspension. The suspension is so stiff. And I haven't put any preload into this bike. It's exactly on the stock settings. The more I ride it around, the more I thought it was just a little stiff. When you hit these things right there, yeah, that was not pleasant. It's just, I don't know, it's a little too much. It feels like there's a little too much preload in it, or something like that. And I don't know, that's not something you can fix. No adjustability, so you're kind of stuck with it, to be honest. Maybe for a lighter rider it won't be that big a deal, but I don't know, kind of a sore spot for this motorcycle. Now, another thing that I wanted to talk about is temperature, actually. Normally I wouldn't talk about that on a naked bike, especially because the cylinders are right up front, right? So they get cooled off by airflow. But I have noticed this motorcycle tends to hover right around the 5 cube mark. It once the temperature hits the 5th cube, the fans come on and they go down, and then it goes right back up. So this bike does tend to get a little toasty. You actually don't feel it any as a rider. You don't feel the temperature that the motorcycle's feeling, which is good and bad. Because if you feel the temperature, you know, like, okay, maybe I need to take a break or something like that. Let the fans catch up, let everything cool down. But if you don't feel it, then you just keep on riding. And who knows, maybe you let the bike get a little too hot and you start throwing some engine lights or something like that. Again, maybe a tune will help. Maybe it's running a little bit lean from the factory, and once you throw a tune on there, it will richen up the kind of down low portion of the map, which will help keep the bike cool as you're doing stoplight to stoplight. But I don't know, I'm not an engineer, I just ride motorcycles. The last thing I'll say on temperature is this bike behaves differently the cooler it is. The warmer the bike is, the less smooth the throttle is. So that herky-jerky thing we were talking about earlier, that goes away when the bike is cold. But when the bike's hot, it'll shake really bad. Usually it's the other way around. When the bike is cold, it shakes and shudders and does weird stuff, and then when it warms up, it smooths out. Not sure what's going on there, but anytime now, light. Anytime. It's not like I'm wearing a leather jacket and it's 80 degrees outside. Oh, dang it. Another red light. Come on. Let me go. Let me go. I don't really like riding around in the city. I'm just doing it for a video. Plenty of power to leave a stoplight very quickly. And again, I'm not spinning the tire because I'm heavier, so I don't know if you're noticing that. I don't know, maybe just go eat another cheeseburger. Put a little bit of weight on. Oh boy. Now that little city section done, why don't we head back into the garage and answer some Discord questions about the Z650. Just... God damn it. Oh man, I just took a tag to the nuts. Why did I try to make a point? Ow.
Alrighty, so I brought the bike back into the garage. I figured it's time to do a little Discord question and answer session. I said that weird, I'm not sure why. But let's power right through and on into our first question from A. Riley 95. After riding the Z650, have you lost a little respect for Nick you had? Not really, actually. I understand why he likes this bike as much as he does. It's not the best motorcycle out there, but it is a lot of fun and you can really get to know and really enjoy this motorcycle. MD Ranger asks, what are the best bang for buck mods? Well, on this motorcycle, I think the best thing that you could do is change the handlebars. I think you're really going to improve the ride on this motorcycle substantially by putting a slightly higher and further back set of handlebars so you can sit more upright on this motorcycle. I personally don't like being hunched forward especially on a naked bike like this. Another thing that I would do personally as a bigger guy is try and lower the foot pegs a little bit because they are just a little high for me. German A2 Boy asks, is the Z650 better / worth the price difference between the Z400, Ninja 400? Absolutely 100%. This is better than a Z400. The Z400, this is going to feel fine. It's going to feel like a baby version of this. It's going to feel like an MT-03, but you know, kind of with balls. The MT-03 has a little bit of a, it's just, I don't know, it's a little too soft. The Ninja's gonna have a little bit more poke, and then this is going to have way more. This is in a completely different class. And if you're thinking at all about getting a middleweight naked bike in the 650 class, I think this is a great option right up there next to the MT-07. The MT-07 is a little better though. Bill Mook asks, would you rather have the Z650 or Ninja 650 and why? Now, upon initial reading of that, my quick answer is the Z650 because it's not covered in plastic. However, I do like the Ninja 650's looks way more than the Z650. I do personally think this is kind of an ugly motorcycle, and the Ninja, it looks like a sport bike. So if you're willing to deal with all of the work that having plastics on your motorcycle entails, that's the way to go. Personally, I'm not sure if the looks are enough to drive me away from this motorcycle and into having to deal with taking all the plastics off to do every little thing. So, kind of a toss-up, really down to personal preference. Ride Red, Bleed Blue. Does the Z650 feel like another stepping stone / progression motorcycle, or does it feel premium enough to be a long-term bike? And then if we could compare it to the Z900. I've never ridden a Z900, so I can't compare it to that. But this motorcycle is absolutely one that you can live with for a long, long time. It does have a premium feel. I won't say it's as good as something like a Street Triple, because it's not. Or maybe even something like the MT-09. The MT-09 has some more high quality components on this. But this is definitely a motorcycle that you can be proud to ride. It's got enough punch that you're not really gonna grow out of it, especially in the mid-range. It feels really good, and it's more than fast enough to do anything that you would want on the street. So if you're thinking about this as your next step bike, this is definitely one that you're gonna hang on to for a couple of years. Bella the Kid asks, how will you be able to keep up in group rides? Are you going to be stuck in the back because of the engine size, or will you be able to lead the squad on the brave little toaster? Well, this motorcycle's definitely fast enough to be able to keep up in a group ride. No problem whatsoever. You can absolutely lead. And to be honest, a 400 can keep up in a group ride too. And if it can't, you probably shouldn't be riding with that group anymore. Lemon, how does the Z650 wheelie? I can't wheelie, so with me on it, really bad. But in general, this bike can definitely pick the front wheel up. You're probably not gonna do it on power alone. You're gonna have to clutch it up, but it could happily do it. Blauder, BL0D asks, how does the Z650 compare to the Sportster? Only fair since you compared the CBR 500 to it. Well, this bike is better than the Sportster in basically every way. Where the CBR felt a little bit more plasticky, this does have a real substantial quality to it that the CBR doesn't. And in that sense, comparing them similarly, I mean, this is a better motorcycle than the Sportster. I do like the way the Sportster looks better than this, but other than that, I gotta take the Z. Alejandro asks, will the Z650 help me get a girlfriend? Nope, it won't. It won't. Motorcycles won't. You might want to start with your personality first. I'm just kidding. No, this bike is not going to be a chick magnet or anything like that. If anything, it's going to be a dude magnet. So if you roll that way, then this is the way to go. Bang Shift Bill, is the Z650 truly the worst bike ever made? No, that prize goes to any Royal Enfield. This motorcycle will clobber up on basically anything coming from Royal Enfield. So no, it's not the worst motorcycle. It might be the ugliest motorcycle ever made, but I like it. It's pretty good. Jaded Calamari asks, what is the scrap value by weight of the Z650? Also, how many shitpost questions are we allotted each before we have a serious question? Well, you can have as many shitpost questions as you want. I might not read them all, but you can ask as many as you want. And as for your question about value by weight, this motorcycle's definitely more worthwhile in one piece. As much as we like to make fun of Nick on the server for having a Z650, this is a very good motorcycle. And with that, I actually want to take this bike back out on the road and kind of finalize all my thoughts, put them together for you, and wrap this thing up.
Alrighty guys, finishing this one out in motion just like we started. I wanted to take a minute and kind of finalize my thoughts here. And the first thing I want to say is I like this motorcycle. Do I love it? No. Now before we get into all the reasons why I dislike this motorcycle, let's start out with the positive things this time. First of all, the biggest positive that this motorcycle has is its engine. The engine in this bike is very, very, very good. Honestly, it's making me consider taking another look at the Vulcan S because, I don't know, this is an interesting engine and I'd like to see it in other platforms. The thing that I like about this engine is its punchy mid-range, but it is a little herky-jerky on-off throttle. But like I said, that's solvable very easily with a tune. And again, normally I think a tune is a giant waste of money. Not so on this motorcycle. I think you could actually really benefit from having a tune on here. Next thing I like are the brakes. They're another just shockingly good part of this motorcycle. The front brake feel is way better than it has any right to be. It's really kind of shocking, actually. They work really, really well. The adjustable lever is really nice because you can pull it in closer to the bars because you never have to bottom the bar out. And the combination with ABS means that you don't have to worry about tucking it. Another thing I like about this bike is its relaxed ergonomic package. It's super duper comfortable if you're not as tall as me. If you're a little shorter than me, this will be perfect. I think this bike is basically a bigger MT-03. So for example, if the MT-03 is something like a medium, think of the Z650 as a large. It's literally just a, you know, somebody hit the MT-03 with a enlarging ray, and it grew and turned green because it drank a lot of Monster Energy drinks. But that means it also makes the same kind of sound as the MT-03, just a little bit deeper. I think this motorcycle will sound good to you if you haven't heard another exhaust note before. So if you've only heard parallel twins, this will sound good. It's got, you know, some deep throaty bellow to it, but it's no V4, it's no inline 4. It sounds like a really big lawnmower to me. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend getting a pipe on it, even though you are getting a tune for this bike. Now, moving on to things that I do not like about this motorcycle, because unfortunately there are some glaring issues. I very much dislike this dashboard. I think this is the ugliest dashboard I've ever seen on a motorcycle. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about that except for buy a 2020, because that is a TFT dash and that solves that problem instantly. Next thing, I cannot stand the way this motorcycle looks. I'm sorry if you really do like it, but it doesn't do anything for me. I don't like the green. I don't like the silver case covers. I think this motorcycle is a little too gaudy, a little too, I don't know, it's a little too eye-catching, and I like something that's a little bit more subtle, although my daily rider is a KTM orange SMCR with an orange frame, so maybe I'm talking out my ass, but I don't know, this one doesn't really do much for me. And another thing that I don't like is the handlebar setup. I think the handlebars are too narrow and too far forward. I think if you were to raise them up a little bit and pull them back a little bit, that would be perfect. And it would also solve the mirror situation where I can't actually see what's going on directly behind me. I can see what's happening in that lane, and I can see what's happening in that lane, but behind me, who knows? You kind of have to have an eye in the back of your head, or, you know, tuck your elbows in and kind of wiggle to see behind yourself. And that's a little unfortunate, because you don't want to have to do that. You want to just be able to look and see. And by getting a wider set of handlebars, you solve that problem basically instantly. And then lastly, I don't really love the vibration that this engine makes. The bike really shakes, and I don't know, it shakes in all the wrong places. So the bottom of the tank shakes right in my groin, which is unpleasant, and the foot pegs shake quite a bit. There's even a little plate where your heel touches the motorcycle, and that causes your entire foot to vibrate at this really high frequency. It's super duper annoying, and unfortunately there's nothing you can do about that on this motorcycle. If you're not familiar with more smooth power plants, it's not going to be an issue, but if you are, you're going to instantly notice this. I would actually hazard to guess that this is more vibrational than my KTM is, and that's a thumper, which that doesn't bode well for the Kawi here. However, you can learn to live with it, or you can get some things to help eat out the vibration on the motorcycle, but I kind of wish you didn't have to. So with my opinions out of the way on this motorcycle, who do I think it's for? And who should run out and go buy one? Well, I think that this bike is great for somebody who is upgrading from their first bike, or if you're a beginner who's a little older, this is a perfect motorcycle for you to start on. This is a motorcycle that you could definitely buy and keep for a really long time, assuming you're not my size. If you're a little smaller than me, it's perfect. So with all that out of the way, I gotta give this bike a completely arbitrary and meaningless rating. I think this one, well, it's Kawasaki, so how about 3.5 Red Bulls out of 1 Monster Energy drink? That sounds about fair, right? Told you they were meaningless. It's a good bike. It gets thumbs up. That's pretty good, right? You know, as I wheel this bike into the garage, it is worth pointing out that I have to leave my SMCR here when I do these living widths, and this is one of the first motorcycles where I haven't kind of felt the need to come back and rescue my motorcycle. This Z is actually fun enough for me to ride around And while I do miss my own personal motorcycle because it's mine, I still have a lot of fun riding this motorcycle around. It's a good bike. I do like it. There are just a couple of little problems here and there.
Thanks again to Ridge Wallets for supporting this video. If you haven't heard about them yet, you must be new around here because we've been championing the Ridge for a long time now. They make the best wallets out there. If you're past grade school, there's not a single acceptable reason for you to be carrying some old canvas trifold that you got from the Old Navy. You gotta upgrade your wallet game, man. Get a Ridge wallet. They come in a variety of colors and even carbon fiber for you fancy boys. They pack RFID blocking technology and they're tiny so you don't have to worry about throwing out your back because you sat on a giant wad of old receipts crammed haphazardly into your wallet. Click the link below and use the code YammieNoob to get 10% off your whole order and free shipping worldwide.
Between this and my desert sled, you might think I'm just some horrible biscotti boy, but really, if you click this video right over here, I will prove to you that I love more motorcycles than just Ducati biscottis. Click it and find out.